Just imagine you raise a child with every ounce of love and sacrifice you have. You give up vacations, hobbies, even your own comfort, just to make sure she has the best. And then, on the happiest day of her life, the wedding you helped make possible, she looks you in the eye and says coldly, "Dad, I'm sorry, but you weren't invited. Please, go." No shouting, no scene, just a quiet fracture in my chest that spread like ice through my veins. I turned and left without a word. 2 hours later, her perfect fairy tale wedding was in ruins. Revenge? No, that was justice. But before we dive into that story, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. The first thing I remember was the sound, a delicate clink as the champagne flute slid from my fingers and shattered on the marble. Crystal shards skittered across the floor like fallen stars, each one catching the light and catching the shock on my daughter's face. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Emily's voice cut through the polite hum of conversation, slicing the elegant atmosphere like glass underfoot. She took a small step back, the satin of her $12,000 wedding gown, the very one I had paid for, whispering against the polished floor, "You weren't supposed to come." I stood frozen in the archway of the grand ballroom, still holding the gift I'd wrapped myself the night before. Paper creased neatly, ribbon tied with care. The air was heavy with the perfume of imported Ecuadorian roses, each one another reminder of the checks I'd written. Above, a chandelier draped prisms of light across walls I'd rented for the price of 3 months' profit from my construction company. "It's your wedding day, sweetheart," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just wanted to congratulate you both." Michael appeared beside her, tuxedo perfectly tailored, posture like a man who had never lifted anything heavier than a pen. His smile was as thin and cold as a January wind. "Mr. Clark," he said smoothly, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" My eyes searched Emily's face, desperate to find the little girl who once begged me to push her higher on the swing, who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during movie nights. But she didn't meet my gaze. Instead, she glanced sideways, aware of the audience gathering. Women in glittering gowns sipped champagne with lips curved into whispers. Men in $1,000 suits pretended to check their watches but didn't miss a single word. "This is a private family celebration," she said, each word measured, her voice tight with embarrassment. "Immediate family only." It was like ice water down my spine. 28 years of bedtime stories, of science fair projects, of working late just to afford her dance lessons, all collapsing into a single casual dismissal. "I paid for this wedding, Emily." My tone was calm, almost too calm. "Every flower, every plate, the dress you're wearing right now." Michael's jaw tightened. "Money doesn't buy class, sir." Emily lowered her eyes. "Michael's right. This isn't about money. It's about fitting in. You don't understand the kind of people who are here." Oh, I understood perfectly. The people here, the ones sipping my champagne, lived in houses built by men like me. But we weren't welcome at their tables. My years of sacrifice had served their purpose. Around us, the room held its breath. A photographer lowered his camera. Even the string quartet still playing seemed suddenly distant, like the music belonged to a different world than the one I stood in. "I see." I set the gift box gently on a nearby table, between untouched champagne flutes and the snowy blooms of white orchids. "I wouldn't want to embarrass you. Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be." I memorized her face, the same green eyes she got from her mother, now hard and closed to me. The smile I'd worked overtime to put braces on was turned away. "You're right," I said quietly. "I don't belong here." The walk to the door felt endless. Each step echoed under the high ceiling, my footsteps swallowed by the sound of designer heels clicking across the marble. And behind me, the laughter resumed, as if I'd never been there at all. Behind me, the murmurs swelled back to life, low, venomous ripples of gossip dressed in silk and champagne. Somewhere in the mix, a brittle laugh cracked the air, high-pitched and false, like glass under a boot. My work boots, polished until they caught the light, suddenly felt like lead on the ballroom's immaculate marble. Every step toward the door was heavier than the last, as though the floor itself resisted letting me go. And then the doors. When they shut behind me, the spring air hit my lungs sharp and clean. Not gentle, but bracing, like freedom torn from a cage. The parking lot stretched wide under a sky turning darker by the minute, a parade of imported cars gleaming in their reserved spots. Bentleys, Maseratis, a Rolls-Royce or two, machines worth more than most people's homes. In the far corner, my old pickup truck waited. Faded paint, worn leather seats, a bed that smelled faintly of sawdust. It looked small, uninvited but honest, exactly like me. I slid my hand into my pocket and pulled out my phone. My fingers were steady, though my pulse wasn't. 25 years of building a company from nothing had taught me how to keep my hands still when the stakes were highest. 25 years of loving an ungrateful daughter had taught me something harder. That loyalty without respect is just another word for slavery. The phone lit up with missed calls from my lawyer, probably about that ongoing property dispute. I ignored them. My thumb scrolled down to a different name, one I hadn't tapped in months. But now it was the only number that mattered. First National Bank Business Services. Inside, she was celebrating her new life without me. Outside, I was about to start mine without her. The phone rang once before a crisp, professional voice answered. First National, this is Patricia speaking. How may I assist you? Patricia, this is James Clark, account number 7794512. I need to initiate stop payments on several authorized transactions. The wind shifted. Somewhere above the Gothic spires of the venue, darker clouds gathered, heavy with the scent of oncoming rain. Shadows spilled across the polished hoods of luxury cars. Of course, Mr. Clark, Patricia replied. Let me pull up your account. Can you verify your social security number and your mother's maiden name? Standard procedure. I gave her the information without hesitation, my eyes still fixed on the ornate entrance, where guests, women in silk dresses, men in tuxedos adjusting cufflinks, swept inside with no idea that the ground beneath their celebration was about to vanish. Thank you. I see several large transactions from today, Patricia said. Which ones specifically? All wedding-related payments, I answered, my voice flat, precise. Venue rental, catering deposit, floral arrangements, photography, music services. Each item fell from my lips like a hammer on nails, an inventory of debts about to go unpaid. Implementation needs to be immediate, I added. A pause. Sir, these are significant amounts. Are you certain you want to stop all payments? I'm certain. There's been a change in circumstances. She began typing, the clatter of her keyboard the only sound besides the faint rush of wind through the truck's antenna. I'll need authorization codes for any transaction over $10,000, she said. I recited them from memory. A quarter century of running a construction business had trained me to remember every critical detail, every number, every clause, every handshake agreement, because sometimes your whole livelihood depended on it. Stop payments are now in effect, Patricia confirmed. Your confirmation numbers are being generated. As she spoke, I watched another sleek black sedan pull up to the curb. A man stepped out holding a gift bag big enough to hold a month's rent. He walked inside smiling, and he had no idea that by nightfall, every bill from this perfect day would be stamped with the same word, canceled. Is there anything else, Mr. Clark? Patricia's voice was crisp, polite, businesslike, as if we hadn't just set the first domino in motion. That covers the banking side. Thank you, Patricia. I ended the call and exhaled slowly, my breath fogging faintly in the cool afternoon air. One battle down and several more to go. The next number I dialed was one I knew all too well. Spokane's most exclusive catering company, the one Emily had insisted on booking despite their astronomical prices. The name alone had been meant to impress her new in-laws. Elegant Affairs Catering. A smooth male voice answered. Elegant Affairs Catering, this is Marcus. Marcus, this is James Clark. I'm calling about the Anderson wedding reception happening right now. Oh yes, Mr. Clark. His tone brightened instantly. Everything is going beautifully. The guests are raving about the appetizers. I'm afraid there's been a financial complication, I said evenly. Payment authorization has been revoked. You'll want to protect your equipment and any remaining food service. Silence. A heavy, startled pause where I could almost hear his mind working. I'm sorry, what exactly are you saying? The bank has stopped payment on your contract, I replied, effective immediately. But we're in the middle of service. The main course hasn't even been served. That's unfortunate timing, I said, keeping my voice calm, almost bored. You might want to speak with the wedding party about alternative payment arrangements. There was a sharp exhale, then click. Marcus disconnected without another word. Smart man. I scrolled to the next number and pressed call. 2 rings. Bellingham Blooms, this is Susan speaking. Susan, this is James Clark regarding the Anderson wedding flowers. Oh, Mr. Clark, the arrangements look stunning. The bride was absolutely thrilled with the orchids. There's been a payment issue, I said. Bank authorization has been canceled. You'll need to collect your arrangements if you want to salvage any value. Collect them, but they're integrated into the entire venue design. Business is business, Susan. I suggest you move quickly. A pause, then a rushed, understood, before the line went dead. 3 more calls followed. Photography services, the string quartet, even the linen rental company. Each conversation was a mirror of the last. A polite greeting, the first flicker of confusion, the slow tightening of voices as the reality set in, then hurried disconnections as vendors scrambled to protect themselves before the storm fully hit. By the time the last call ended, my phone read 4:15 p.m. Through the windshield, I watched a white catering van pull up to the venue's side entrance. Marcus, most likely, here to salvage what he could before the doors closed on him. Inside the ballroom, Emily was probably still smiling for photographs, greeting her guests, blissfully unaware that her perfect day had seconds left on the clock. Michael was likely off in a corner, discussing business opportunities with his father's friends, certain that his new status placed him far above a man who wore work boots. Neither of them had the faintest idea what they'd truly cost themselves today. I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. Slowly, I eased the truck out of the parking space, passing directly in front of the grand venue. Through tall windows framed with velvet drapes, I caught glimpses of the reception, crystal flutes raised in toasts, swirling dresses gliding over polished floors, the whole scene glowing under chandeliers I had paid for. All of it about to change. My phone buzzed in the console. I glanced at the screen. Emily. Her name glowed against the glass, each letter a quiet, trembling knock on a door she just slammed in my face. I let it ring once, twice, before reaching for it. I let the phone ring until it fell silent on its own. The dashboard clock glowed 4:20 p.m. when the first vehicle appeared at the far end of the drive, a gleaming white panel van with Bellingham Blooms scripted elegantly across the side in curling gold letters. Behind the wheel sat Susan, posture straight as a ruler, with 2 assistants riding shotgun. They didn't waste time. The van rolled to a stop near the venue's service entrance, brake lights flaring briefly before they killed the engine. Doors opened. Empty plastic containers, padded transport crates, and floral shears came out in quick succession, all handled with the efficient, wordless rhythm of people who had done this before. Through the tall ballroom windows, I could see the reception in full swing. Light from 100 crystal glasses fractured under the chandeliers, scattering over polished floors like liquid gold. Guests drifted in small groups, smiling, sipping, leaning in close to murmur gossip they thought no one could hear. Emily's imported white orchids, flown in from Ecuador at my expense, stood proudly in the center of it all, the heart of her perfect vision. Michael was off to the side, surrounded by a semicircle of men in bespoke suits. He gestured expansively, no doubt pitching his latest business scheme, playing the role of the charming son-in-law with his important connections. Neither of them noticed the florist team slipping through the side doors. Emily was radiant near the main entrance, the $12,000 worth of silk and pearls flowing around her like liquid moonlight. Every so often, she tilted her head just so, letting her veil catch the light as she accepted congratulations from a steady stream of relatives and guests. Her laugh, bright, airy, and self-assured, carried easily over the low hum of conversation. The sound would change soon enough. Susan appeared in the ballroom doorway, flanked by her two assistants. Each carried an empty container. Without pause, they walked straight toward the altar arrangement, a towering masterpiece of orchids, lilies, and roses framed in greenery so lush it looked almost alive. At first, the guests simply glanced over, curious but unalarmed. But when Susan's team began dismantling the centerpiece, stems snipped, blooms carefully lifted out, confusion started to ripple through the crowd. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. "Excuse me," Emily called out, gliding toward them with the poised smile of someone who'd had practice managing staff. "We're in the middle of our reception. Whatever you need can wait until later." Susan straightened to her full height, a bundle of perfect white orchids in her arms. Her tone was calm, professional, and final. "Ma'am, I'm Susan from Bellingham Blooms. Payment authorization for these arrangements was canceled 40 minutes ago. I need to recover our property." Emily's smile trembled, but didn't yet vanish. "That's impossible. Everything was paid for weeks ago. The account holder, James Clark, contacted us directly," Susan said. "All payments have been stopped." Without another glance, she handed the orchids to an assistant and moved on to the next display, removing flowers with the same careful hands she'd used to place them hours earlier. "I have written authorization to collect our arrangements," she added, her voice steady enough to carry across the room. The color drained from Emily's cheeks. Around them, the music seemed to shrink to a faint echo against the walls. Guests had stopped talking entirely, their attention fixed on the unfolding scene. Michael crossed the floor in quick, purposeful strides, his jaw tight. The warmth in his face was gone, replaced with the sharp angles of irritation. "What exactly is happening here?" he demanded, his voice carrying the brittle authority of a man unaccustomed to being challenged. "Payment issues, sir," Susan replied evenly. "We're collecting unpaid merchandise." One of her assistants had already reached the altar display, wrapping its base in protective plastic, petals trembling slightly as the arrangement tilted in his hands. "This is completely unacceptable," Michael snapped, his voice rising. "Get your manager on the phone immediately." Susan didn't flinch. "I am the manager," she said, meeting his glare without hesitation. "And our contract clearly states that canceled payments void our service obligations." Around them, a silence heavier than the music settled over the ballroom, the kind of silence that comes when a celebration begins to turn. Susan gave a small nod, and her assistants moved like clockwork, two at a time, gliding between tables, lifting centerpieces from white linen like surgeons extracting organs. The blooms were still fresh, fragrant, perfect, but they were no longer hers. Guests watched in frozen silence, hands hovering awkwardly over champagne flutes, unsure whether to intervene or simply stare. Outside, the rumble of a van engine broke the hush. Through the glass, the elegant Affairs Catering logo slid into view, painted in gold script on a sleek black panel. The rear doors swung open and Marcus stepped down first, clipboard in hand, his face set in grim, unshakable purpose. 3 uniformed staff followed him, each carrying the stiff, resigned posture of people about to do an unpleasant but necessary job. This time, they didn't bother with the service entrance. The caterers walked directly through the main doors, cutting through the crowd with no apology, as Susan's team continued their precise dismantling of the flowers. Emily stood rooted in place, her gown shimmering under the chandelier as the orchids, the ones she'd insisted on, the ones I had paid for, vanished one by one into plastic transport containers. Her perfect composure, the cool smile she'd worn all day, began to fracture. The cracks were hairline at first, like fine china under too much heat. There has to be some mistake," she stammered, her voice too loud in the uneasy quiet. "My father wouldn't. He couldn't." "Ma'am, we need to cease food service immediately." Marcus's voice cut clean through hers. He approached, clipboard ready, and spoke as if reading from a script. "Payment authorization was revoked at 4:15. We are contractually obligated to protect our equipment and remaining inventory." Michael moved fast, stepping between them, his body a wall. His voice climbed sharply. "This is my wedding reception. You can't just stop service in the middle of an event." "Sir," Marcus replied, his tone professional but unyielding, We can and we must. When payment authorization is canceled, standard procedure requires immediate asset protection. He flicked a subtle signal to his team. At once, they began covering the buffet stations with white cloths, smothering the bright displays of plated hors d'oeuvres. Silver trays vanished into insulated containers. Champagne bottles were lifted from their ice baths and slid back into rolling carts. The room shifted. Guests shuffled, murmuring to one another, their champagne glasses now nothing more than cold glass in trembling hands. The confident hum of a wedding reception had dissolved into fractured whispers and darting glances. A cell phone rang, sharp, jarring, and somewhere across the room, someone answered in a hurried whisper. Then the music stopped. The string quartet faltered when a man in black approached, bent to speak to their leader, and began packing away microphones. The speakers popped and went silent. Even the soft and ambient lighting over the dance floor dimmed as the sound technician unplugged his mixing board. The glow that had bathed the room in gold slipped into a colder, flatter light. Emily stood at the center of it all, the untouched perfection of her dress thrown into sharp relief against the chaos building around her. She looked like a figure trapped inside a snow globe someone had just shaken too hard. This can't be happening, she whispered, the words barely carrying past her lips. Not today. Not like this. Michael's head turned slowly toward her. His anger was no longer aimed at Marcus or the vendors. Now it was directed squarely at his bride. Emily, he said, his voice low but edged like a blade. What kind of arrangement did your family make? I don't know, she said quickly, her voice cracking for the first time all day. Everything was supposed to be handled. The venue coordinator appeared from the far side of the room, phone still pressed to her ear, her expression carved from tension. She ended her call and approached Emily with the stiff reluctance of someone delivering a verdict. Mrs. Anderson, she began carefully, I've just spoken with our accounting department. All payments for today's event originated from a single account belonging to James Clark. She hesitated just long enough for the words to gather weight. That account holder has revoked authorization for every transaction. The last thread of Emily's composure snapped. Her smile was gone. Her face, drained of color, told the guests what no one had dared to say out loud. The wedding was over. The little girl, my little girl, who had once been the center of my entire world, was now standing at the edge of her own unraveling celebration, finally beginning to comprehend the depth of her father's generosity and the crushing consequences of her own cruelty. Her manicured fingers trembled as she fumbled for her phone, unlocking it with jerky motions, scrolling through familiar names until she found mine. Out in the parking lot, in the quiet bubble of my truck, my own phone began to ring. Emily's name lit up the screen like a ghost from 2 decades of my life, a name that once meant joy, now heavy with betrayal. Through the windshield, I could see her silhouette framed in the venue's doorway. She stood there in her flawless gown, clutching her phone to her ear, desperation etched into every line of her posture. I didn't answer, not yet, because this moment wasn't just about a phone call, it was the culmination of 25 years. 25 years of loving her more than I loved myself. 25 years of believing that selflessness would shape her character, not hollow it out. She had been only 3 when her mother died. Cancer stole Sarah from us in 6 brutal months, leaving me with a toddler who cried for mommy every morning and every night, her tiny voice breaking my heart over and over again. I could have remarried. I could have brought someone in to help, to take the edge off the loneliness, to share the burden. But I didn't. I chose to be both mother and father, to give Emily the kind of love that left no room for doubt. I remember one night when she was 5, curled against my chest in her pink pajamas, her hair smelling faintly of baby shampoo. Daddy, will you read me another story? It was late. I had a dawn meeting with investors, a project hanging by a thread. But her green eyes, Sarah's eyes, looked up at me with absolute trust. Of course, sweetheart, Daddy always has time for you. That became my creed. James Clark always had time for Emily, always had money for what she needed, always found a way to make her happy. When she was 8, I enrolled her in a private school where tuition consumed half my quarterly profits. The best education money can buy, I told myself, writing checks that meant smaller bonuses, fewer business expansions, leaner personal budgets. When I told her she'd be going to Riverside Academy, she threw her arms around my neck. Thank you, Daddy. I'll study really hard and make you proud. And she did. Straight A's, school plays where I sat in the front row, my construction calloused hands applauding louder than any other parent. After one performance, she rushed to me, cheeks glowing with accomplishment. Did you see me remember all my lines, Daddy? I was thinking about you the whole time. But high school changed things. At Riverside, wealth wasn't just normal, it was expected. Her classmates had trust funds, vacation homes, and wardrobes worth more than my truck. Emily started noticing the gap between our lives and theirs. Her sweet 16 was a turning point. It cost more than some people's annual salaries. Professional catering, designer decorations, a luxury BMW gleaming in the driveway. I thought I'd given her the moon. But when she unwrapped the keys to a Honda instead, her smile faltered. Everyone else got BMWs, Dad. This Honda, it's kind of embarrassing. That was the first time entitlement slipped into her voice, the first warning sign I ignored. College was worse. Northwestern University, her dream school, nearly bankrupted the expansion I'd spent years planning. And it wasn't just tuition. It was the apartment in the good part of town, the furniture, the clothes so she could fit in. Every check I wrote was another piece of my own future pushed further away. But I told myself it was worth it, that someday when she looked back she'd understand the sacrifices, sorority dues, spring break trips to Cancun, summer networking jaunts to Nantucket, study abroad programs in Italy that somehow required a luxury shopping spree before departure. Every semester seemed to arrive hand in hand with a fresh round of urgent financial demands. Dad, I need $3,000 for the business fraternity trip. It's essential for networking, Emily would say. The word essential wrapped in the kind of confidence that only comes from never having been told no. Phone calls became little more than transaction requests. The warmth of conversation was replaced with direct, almost clinical exchanges. How much, how fast, and to what account? Visits home dwindled until they were reserved for holidays, and even then she arrived more like a guest than a daughter. When she did call, our conversations ended the moment the transfer confirmation hit her account. The little girl who once sat cross-legged on my lap, begging for just one more bedtime story, had learned to measure love in wire transfers and credit card limits. Graduate school brought Michael into her life. Michael, with his old money, polished manners, and the kind of family connections that made my decades of hard work look small and provincial. To Emily, he represented the world she believed she belonged in, a world where success was inherited, not built with sweat and sunburn. It wasn't long before the subtle comments started. Could you maybe wear something other than those work boots when you visit? Michael's friends will be there. The boots that had walked the scaffolds of half the city, the boots that had paid for her education, her cars, her dream vacations. Suddenly, they were an embarrassment. The woman who used to beam with pride when I attended school events now seemed to flinch at the reminder of where she came from. My success in construction meant nothing in her new social circle. To her, the company I had built from a beat-up pickup truck into a thriving enterprise was just a small business. I'll never forget last Christmas when she introduced me to Michael's parents. This is my father. He owns a small business. 25 years of building Clark Construction from the ground up, employing over 60 people, putting a roof over her head, food on her table, and designer shoes in her closet, shrunk down to 2 words: small business. Then came the wedding discussions. Dad, we need to talk about wedding funding. Michael's family has certain expectations for the ceremony. Not, thank you for offering to help. Not, we'd be so grateful. Just expectations, as though my life's work existed solely to bankroll her vision of perfection. Wedding planning meetings became boardroom negotiations. Emily brought spreadsheets. Michael weighed in on cost efficiency. Neither of them seemed to grasp that each line item on their list represented months of my labor. My hands blistered, my back aching, my workers sweating under the sun. Imported orchids from Ecuador. Champagne that cost more per bottle than one of my crew earned in a day. A dress priced higher than most people's monthly rent. This isn't about money, Dad. It's about quality, she told me. Michael's family knows quality. Quality, the kind my money could buy, but my presence apparently diminished. And so it became clear. The very success that had funded their dream wedding had also made me too common to be part of it. My phone buzzed again. Emily's third call in 5 minutes. Through the venue's massive glass windows, I saw her pacing, the hem of her wedding dress dragging behind her like a flag of surrender. The woman who had once been my little girl now looked like someone frantically calculating the cost of her own choices. 25 years of sacrifice had led to this. Not a grateful daughter celebrating her father's generosity, but a desperate bride finally realizing what she'd lost. The irony was exquisite. The love that had spoiled her would now teach her its true value. I reached for the phone. Time to answer. The engine purred as I pulled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, Emily's frantic silhouette grew smaller and smaller. Her white dress glowed under the fading light, her phone a bright, desperate beacon in the dusk, flashing for the 7th time in 10 minutes. Each ring felt deliberate, measured, a rhythm I controlled, not her. It was my tempo now. The drive home took 20 minutes winding through Spokane's Saturday evening traffic. 20 minutes where my phone lit up again and again with Emily's name, her chosen graduation photo smiling back at me with all the promise of a girl who had once hugged her father without needing a check in return. Each call came with more urgency than the last. By the time I rolled into my driveway, she'd left 4 voicemails. I sat in the garage, engine ticking in the cooling air, the scent of exhaust faint but sharp. As the garage door rumbled down behind me, like a curtain falling on the day's first act, I pressed play. Voicemail 1. Dad, something's wrong with the payments. There's been a mistake. Call me back immediately. Her voice was clipped, all business. Voicemail 2. This isn't funny anymore. The vendors are taking everything. People are staring. Just call me back. The first cracks in her composure. Voicemail 3. Please, Dad, I don't understand what's happening. Michael's family is asking questions I can't answer. The tremor in her tone was unmistakable now. Voicemail 4, her voice breaking. I need you. Please pick up, please. Before I could pocket the phone, it rang again. Emily's name flashed, framed by that same college graduation photo. A moment when I'd felt nothing but pride. The last time she'd embraced me without an ulterior motive. I let it ring to the 5th tone before I answered. Hello, Emily. Dad, finally, what have you done? How could you destroy my wedding? Pure panic now. None of the polished dismissal she'd used on me earlier in the day. Good. Panic meant awareness. Awareness was the first step toward understanding. I didn't destroy anything, I said evenly. I simply stopped paying for things. You can't just stop. This is my wedding day. There are 60 people here asking why the flowers are gone, why dinner service stopped. Where are you calling from? The hotel. We had to. The venue coordinator said we needed to settle the bills before we could stay. They asked us to leave. That explained the echo in her voice, the absence of laughter, music, and clinking glasses in the background. Emily, I said, I need you to listen very carefully. When was the last time you thanked me for anything? What? Dad, this isn't the time for lectures. I need you to call these vendors and fix this mess. Answer the question. Silence. In the background, Michael's voice, sharp, irritated, bled through. I don't remember specific times, she said at last, but I've always been grateful. You know that. Actually, I don't know that. What I do know is that 3 hours ago, you told me I didn't belong at your wedding. A wedding I paid for entirely. I didn't mean it like that. I was stressed. Wedding day nerves. Her voice softened, morphing into the coaxing tone she'd perfected in college whenever she wanted money for spring break trips. Dad, please. I'll make it up to you. We can talk about everything later, but right now I need you to authorize the payments so we can save what's left of the reception. What's left? The cake is still here, some guests are still here, the photographer's waiting to see if we can work something out. And what exactly do you plan to use for payment? Another pause. This one stretched. I thought you would handle it. You always handle it. I always have. That's true. Do you know how much I've spent on you over the past 25 years? Dad, please don't make me guess numbers right now. I'm in crisis mode. Take a guess. Rough estimate. I don't know, maybe 50,000? I almost laughed. 50,000 wouldn't have covered your sophomore year at Northwestern. Emily, I've spent over $300,000 on your education, housing, transportation, and lifestyle since your mother died. That doesn't include what I spent today. The line went quiet, save for the sound of her breathing. Uneven, shaky. 300, she whispered. That can't be right. It's conservative. I have documentation for every single expenditure, I said, my voice steady but cold. Why are you telling me this now? She asked, a hint of defensiveness creeping in. Because you've never asked, I replied. In 25 years, not once have you inquired about the cost of your lifestyle or shown even the slightest concern for the burden it's placed on me. Burden? I'm your daughter. Yes, you are. And I loved you enough to sacrifice everything for your happiness. The question is, I let the words hang in the air like a weight. What have you ever sacrificed for mine? From the other end of the line, Michael's voice rose sharply. Emily must have covered the phone because their muffled argument bled through only in fragments. When she came back, her tone was tight with stress. Dad, Michael's family is really upset. They're asking questions about our finances. They want to know how we're going to pay for this. That, I said evenly, is between you and your husband. But I don't have that kind of money. You know I don't. Then perhaps, I replied, it's time you learn to earn it. The silence that followed stretched nearly half a minute. I could almost hear her mind spinning, reality pressing against the glass bubble she'd lived in for so long. What do you want from me? She finally asked. I want you to understand what you threw away this afternoon when you dismissed the man who made your entire lifestyle possible. I understand now, she whispered. I was wrong. Can we fix this? We'll see, I said, my tone unreadable. I'm reviewing our entire financial relationship. There will be documentation. We'll discuss this properly when I'm ready. I ended the call and powered off my phone. Through my kitchen window, the distant lights of Spokane shimmered against the encroaching darkness. Somewhere out there, my daughter was facing her first night of true financial independence. For her, the education was just beginning. The warm glow of my desk lamp spilled across the familiar terrain of my home office. Filing cabinets lined the wall like silent sentinels, guarding a quarter century of meticulous record-keeping. Records Emily had never cared to see. Tonight, those papers would finally tell their story. I set my steaming coffee beside the computer and opened the first drawer. Labeled Emily, Education, 2020. The metal runners gave a soft groan, like even they knew the weight of what lay inside. Behind me, the house creaked as it settled into the evening, but my thoughts moved with the same precise, relentless rhythm that had built Clark Construction from nothing into a 60-employee enterprise. This wasn't revenge. This was an audit. The first folder I pulled free read Riverside Academy, 12 years of private school tuition, every payment neatly documented with bank transfers, semester reports, and receipts that told a story in cold, unflinching numbers. $8,000 per year in 2008, climbing to $12,000 by graduation. The math hit like a lead weight, $126,000, just for her elementary and high school education. I created a new spreadsheet, fingers flying over the keys with muscle memory, born from decades of work. Column headers appeared on the screen. Date, description, amount, category, running total. 25 years of fatherhood, reduced to data points, formulas, and the undeniable truth of what love had cost. The next folder I opened bore the emblem of Northwestern University, thicker, heavier than the rest. Its seams stretched with years of accumulated paper. Inside, it was all there. Dormitory contracts signed with youthful excitement, meal plan agreements, receipts for study and abroad program fees, and the cold black and white reality of tuition, $52,000 per year for 4 straight years. Room and board tacked on another $15,000 annually. Then came the extras that had somehow become essential. A $3,500 spring break in Cancun during her junior year, and the 8,200 summer in Italy during her brief but passionate art history phase. "It's essential for my education, Dad," she'd insisted about Italy. This is how people in my program network. Page by page, receipt by receipt, the numbers rose like a tide. By the time I reached the last invoice, the Northwestern total stood at $284,000. 4 years of college costing more than most people earned in 5. The transportation folder told its own familiar story. Her first car at 16, a reliable Honda Civic for $18,000. 6 months later, everyone else drives BMWs, she complained, and by 19 she had a BMW 320i for $28,000. At 25, the BMW X3 because Michael's friends drive luxury SUVs. Each car came with hidden costs, insurance premiums, maintenance, registration, all of it absorbed quietly, without her ever seeing the bills. My phone buzzed. Emily's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring and turned back to my spreadsheet. The technology and living expenses folder was the darkest of all. Post-graduation, I'd covered the rent for her Lincoln Park apartment, $20,800 a month, for 3 years. Credit card balances paid off when her spending outpaced the generous allowance I gave her. Designer clothing, spa treatments, weekend getaways with friends whose parents maintained the same lifestyle. Small amounts here, bigger ones there. The total snowballed like compound interest. By the time I was done tallying, the breakdown was sobering. Education, $410,000. Transportation, $75,000. Housing support, $125,000. Personal expenses, $180,000. Wedding, $147,000. $937,000. Nearly $1 million given over 25 years. Each expense had seemed reasonable at the time. Private school as an investment, college as a door opener, a reliable car for safety, nice clothes for confidence, a wedding to celebrate love. But the sum told a harsher truth. Emily had never contributed a single dollar toward her own life. Never held a job longer than 6 months. Never once asked what something cost. Never once said thank you. I reached for the old photo albums I'd kept since she was a child. Emily at 8, gap-toothed, cheeks flushed after her first school play. "Thank you for coming, Daddy. Did you hear how loud they clapped?" Emily at 12, victorious at the spelling bee. "I thought about you when I was nervous, and it helped me remember the words." When had she stopped seeing me as a person to thank? When had I become nothing more than an endless account she could draw from? The phone rang again. Emily's 14th call since our last conversation. This time she left a voicemail. "Dad, please answer. I've been thinking about what you said. I know I haven't been grateful enough. I know I've taken you for granted. Michael's family is threatening to walk away if we can't explain the financial situation. I need to know what you want from me." What I wanted was 25 years of appreciation, but I knew it would never come. What I needed wasn't just numbers in a column or tidy folders stacked in order. It was certainty. Certainty that Emily, for the first time in her life, would confront the reality behind the privilege she had treated as a birthright. I printed the spreadsheet summary, the figures crisp in black ink, every digit a silent testament to choices I'd made for her sake. Then I gathered the supporting documents into thick manila folders, each one labeled in neat, deliberate handwriting. Education, transportation, housing, personal expenses, wedding costs. These weren't just receipts, they were artifacts. Each line item carried the weight of a decision made, a vacation forgone, an extra contract taken, hours stolen from my own life so hers could remain effortless. Love translated into bank transfers. Sacrifice measured not in words, but in wire transactions and cleared checks. Tomorrow, we would talk, and she would have no way to hide from the truth. The questions I'd ask would have nothing to do with emotion and everything to do with responsibility, accountability, and the real price tag of entitlement. Tonight, though, was for preparation. The evidence lay across my desk like exhibits in a courtroom. My desk lamp pooling warm light over $1 million worth of unacknowledged devotion. For 25 years, Emily had lived like royalty. She'd worn the crown without once considering the man who built the throne. And worse, she'd treated me not as a father, but as hired help, expected to provide but never acknowledged. That era was ending. My phone lit up with her name again. For a moment, my hand twitched toward it, but I stopped. No, let her sit with the discomfort. Let her feel the slow crawl of panic that comes when you realize the safety net you've always taken for granted might not be there tomorrow. This wasn't cruelty, it was education. The rest of the night passed in deliberate silence. By Sunday morning, the air outside was brisk and clean, the kind of early March morning that clears the mind and sharpens the will. My briefcase stood by the door, heavy with 25 years of meticulous evidence, ready to be laid out like a case file. Richards and Associates had agreed to see me at 9 o'clock a.m., a professional courtesy between people who understood that certain matters couldn't wait until Monday. Their law office carried the gravity I needed. Mahogany-paneled walls, shelves heavy with leather-bound legal volumes, certificates framed in dark wood, testifying to decades of earned authority. Margaret Richards herself greeted me in the conference room. Her silver hair was swept back, her tailored suit crisp, her eyes sharp with competence. "Mr. Clark," she said, taking her seat, "I've reviewed the preliminary documentation you sent over. I must say, this level of record-keeping is exceptional." She began spreading the folders across the polished table, her fingers moving with methodical precision, scanning page after page of my life's quiet sacrifices. Each document revealed another piece of Emily's reality: the tuition payments, the apartment rent, the car leases, the wedding bills. 25 years of comfort she never once questioned. "The total amount," she said at last, tapping the final summary page, "comes to just under $1 million over the course of her life. That's substantial, even by our firm's standards." I leaned back in the leather chair, my voice steady. "I want this handled professionally," I said. "No emotion, just business." Emily needed to see, really see, the financial reality she'd been blind to for decades. Not just numbers on a page, but the weight behind them. The silent sacrifices that had kept her life smooth and gilded. Margaret understood this instantly. She leaned back in her leather chair, pen poised over a yellow legal pad, her eyes sharp and unflinching. "The documentation is airtight," she said, her voice calm yet edged with steel. "We have grounds for either reclassifying these as gifts subject to recovery or establishing them formally as promissory notes. Given the years of escalating demands without an ounce of reciprocal responsibility, you have multiple paths forward." Her words were precise, deliberate, like a surgeon explaining the operation before making the first incision. She laid out the plan with clinical efficiency. Step 1, a formal demand letter requesting full repayment within 30 days. Step 2, a detailed accounting of every expenditure, each backed by undeniable evidence. Step 3, a clearly defined timeline for response and negotiation. Step 4, professional consequences for noncompliance. No emotional appeals, no messy family drama, just a clean transition from personal disappointment to legal obligation. By 11 o'clock, the machine was in motion, the documents were printed on heavy, cream-colored paper, the law firm's letterhead crisp and commanding at the top. The language was formal, the tone unmistakable. $937,000 repayment within 30 days, or legal proceedings would commence. Margaret slid the papers toward me. "We'll arrange courier delivery this afternoon. Signature required. That way there's no debate over whether it was received." Driving home with my own copies, I felt a strange blend of grim satisfaction and quiet grief. I hadn't wanted it to come to this. But Emily had written this ending herself. Years of indulgence had calcified into entitlement. And entitlement, when unchecked, eventually demands an invoice. At exactly 2:15 p.m., my phone lit up. The courier confirmed delivery at the Spokane Grand Hotel, room 1247. Recipient, Emily Clark Anderson. I could almost picture the moment. Emily's face registering mild curiosity when the hotel desk called about a legal delivery. Her assumption that it was some harmless vendor paperwork. Michael stepping forward with that smug air of authority, breaking the seal with a flourish. Then reading aloud, slowly the color draining from his face as comprehension took hold. The first call came at 2:47 p.m. Emily's name flashed across my screen. I didn't answer. Neither did I answer the second, third, or fourth. Message 1. Dad, what is this? This can't be serious. Message 2. $900,000? That's impossible. You never said these were loans. Message 3. Please call me back. Michael's family is asking questions. I don't know what to tell them. Message 4. Her voice cracked, small and unsteady. I don't understand how everything went so wrong so fast. I sat in silence, letting each message hang in the air like echoes in a canyon. This was not cruelty. It was consequence. At that very moment in the Grand Hotel, Emily and Michael were coming face to face with a concept they had managed to dodge for years. Accountability backed by legal authority. 25 years of gifts had been neatly reclassified as recoverable debt. Every dollar now had a ledger entry. Every indulgence now carried a price tag. The wedding disaster had been the opening act, loud, messy, and public. This, however, was the main performance. Margaret had been clear. Civil debt recovery follows a set pattern. They would need legal counsel to respond. That counsel would cost money they didn't have, for a debt they couldn't pay. The era of no-strings generosity was over. The meter was now running. Emily's calls became a relentless drumbeat that Sunday afternoon, one after another, pounding against the silence I'd chosen to keep. 15 missed calls, 8 voicemails. Each message carried a new layer of unraveling, the steady peeling back of her pride to expose the raw fear beneath. This was the same woman who had so easily dismissed me from her wedding without a second thought. Yet now her voice, once confident, entitled, was steeped in the slow realization of just what exactly she had dismissed. For 25 years, Emily had taken my financial support as naturally as one takes in air, never questioning its permanence, never imagining it could end. Now all of that generosity had a number, a deadline, and consequences. 30 days, $937,000, and no escape hatch. The 16th call came in. Her name flashed on the screen again, and this time I answered. Dad, please, she said, the word breaking apart as it left her. We need to talk about this reasonably. Her tone had shifted from the sharp panic of the day before into something flatter, heavier. The sound of someone who'd been awake all night turning over the same thought without finding a way out. This legal document, it can't be real. I leaned back in my kitchen chair, the steam from my coffee curling in the still air. Outside, Spokane's Sunday afternoon unfolded like a postcard. Families strolling with Dean, children wobbling down sidewalks on bicycles, sunlight glinting off the leaves. Ordinary life, untouched by the storms that raged in other people's worlds. It's real, Emily, I said quietly. As real as the 30 days you have to respond. But 900,000? Her voice faltered, like the words themselves had weight. That's impossible. You never said any of it was a loan. I never said it was a gift either, I replied. You simply assumed. A faint sound came through the receiver. Michael's voice, tense and clipped, paper rustling, the steady pacing of someone boxed in by walls they couldn't see until it was too late. Emily, I said, my tone calm, almost conversational. I need to understand something. Who exactly do you plan to contact for help with this situation? Silence stretched long enough for me to hear her swallow. Finally, she said, family, friends, people who care about me. I see. Well, I said, you have 29 days remaining. I suggest you start making those calls. I ended the conversation without another word and set my phone to silent. Let her discover what I had learned a long time ago. That nearly $1 million in debt has a way of clarifying who truly cares and who will offer polite sympathy before stepping out of reach. The phone lit up again and again that afternoon, her name appearing and fading like a distress signal lost in fog. I ignored each call, left every voicemail unheard. By evening, the screen stayed dark. The storm on her end had gone quiet, or perhaps she'd simply run out of people to call. Monday morning brought a different kind of silence. No frantic messages, no desperate bargaining, just nothing. I drove to the construction site where our crew was breaking ground on a new office complex. The roar of machinery and the thud of earth against steel felt grounding, a reminder that while one part of my life was unraveling in a hotel room across town, another was steadily being built from the ground up. Physical work had always been my anchor, the place I went when the noise of life threatened to overwhelm me. There was a kind of quiet wisdom in the roar of machinery, in the deep rumble of the excavator biting into the earth. The scent of freshly turned soil, sharp and earthy, filled the air. Every shovel of dirt removed, every foundation trench dug, was a reminder that real things, solid, lasting things, took effort, planning, and patience. Around 10 o'clock, Dave, my foreman, ambled over. His face was smeared with dust, his hard hat tipped back slightly, revealing lines etched by years in the sun. "Boss," he said, eyeing me curiously, "you seem different today. Everything okay?" I kept my gaze on the excavator as its bucket scooped another load of earth. "Family situation," I said evenly. "Sometimes you have to make hard decisions for people's own good." Dave gave a slow nod. "Kids?" "Something like that." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to see Emily's name on the screen. A text. "Dad, I've been trying to reach family and friends. Everyone is shocked by the amount." "Please call me." I didn't bother replying. One swipe and the message disappeared. An hour later, another text lit up the screen. "Aunt Margaret says that she can't get involved. She thinks I should learn responsibility." What does that even mean? I could almost hear the indignation in her voice through the words. Minutes later, another ping. "Sarah won't take my calls anymore." Lisa is asking questions about why I never worked. People are treating me like I did something wrong. The messages came in a steady stream through the afternoon, each one a fresh crack in the carefully polished image Emily had built over the years. Her college roommate was uncomfortable with the conversation. Her sorority sisters, once delighted to receive lavish birthday gifts and all-expenses-paid weekend trips, were now taken aback by the truth about where the money had come from. And her few remaining close friends, they were sympathetic, but unwilling to go near the kind of numbers Emily was now dealing with. Meanwhile, Michael's world was starting to crumble too. His mother had called 3 times, her voice apparently sharp with accusation, demanding explanations. His father wanted a formal family meeting to discuss reputation management. His brother, never one to waste time on pleasantries, was asking pointed questions about financial disclosures before marriage. By Tuesday, the pattern was unmistakable. Emily's so-called support network was collapsing under the sheer weight of nearly $1 million in debt. People who had happily sipped champagne on her yacht, worn the designer clothes she bought them, and basked in her generosity were suddenly very busy, hard to reach, or politely declining to get involved. Wednesday brought a different kind of message. "Dad, Michael's family is pressuring him to consider annulment. They think our marriage was based on financial deception. Please call me so we can work this out." I nearly smiled at that. Michael's family, it seemed, had a quicker grasp of reality than their son ever had. By Thursday, the text had lost all pretense of pride. Just 6 blunt words appeared on my screen. "Nobody will help. Everyone has excuses." Michael had retreated into a cold, brittle silence, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary, and even then his words felt like they'd been sanded down to avoid accidental civility. His parents, meanwhile, had moved into full defensive mode. They wanted him to consult a lawyer, not about the marriage, not yet, but about safeguarding his assets, as if my very existence posed some kind of financial contagion. "I don't understand how everything changed so fast," Emily had written in her last text before the real quiet began. 25 days remained on the clock, and in those 25 days she was learning, truly learning, what financial independence meant when you'd never cultivated the skills, the discipline, or the resilience to achieve it. Her education wasn't academic. It was real-world, raw, and utterly unforgiving, and it was unfolding exactly as I had intended. Then came Friday morning. It wasn't the kind of silence that feels peaceful. This was the kind that presses against your chest, whispering that something is brewing just out of sight. No text messages, no voicemails heavy with the usual desperation. I checked my phone twice just to make sure it was still functioning. It was. The stillness was only the calm before impact. By Monday morning, the attack had begun. Rachel, my assistant, dependable, unflappable Rachel, knocked on my office door at exactly 9:03 a.m. There was a strange tightness in her expression as she stepped inside, a printed email clutched in her hand. "Mr. Clark," she began, her voice careful. "This came in from the Spokane Business Journal." I took the sheet and read it. Once. Twice. The words were professional, restrained. But the subtext was a scalpel, not a pen. They were inquiring about whether personal family matters were disrupting my business operations. Questions about my stability, my decision-making, my treatment of family members. Someone had been making phone calls. "Any idea how they heard about this?" I asked, my voice level. "That's not all," Rachel said quietly. She handed me her tablet. On the screen was a Facebook post. It was Emily's wedding photo, the perfect sunlit moment frozen in time, paired with a long, trembling paragraph. In it, she told the world about her heartless father who had ruined her special day and was now demanding impossible sums of money as punishment. The words dripped with wounded innocence, carefully crafted to bleed sympathy. 200 shares, hundreds of comments, gasps of outrage, messages of solidarity, people offering prayers and pity. And sprinkled among them were tags aimed directly at longtime business associates of mine. My phone rang. It was Bob Martinez from Martinez Concrete, a partner I'd worked with for 2 decades. "James," he said slowly, "I'm seeing some things online about your daughter, about her wedding expenses. There's documentation," I told him, "that paints a very different picture." "I hope so," he replied, "because people are starting to ask about your contracts with the city. You know how politics work around here." Within the next hour, 3 more calls came in, each one from someone I respected. Each one asking questions draped in politeness, but weighted with suspicion. Emily and Michael hadn't been idle. They had been strategic. And now the battlefield was shifting from private debt to public reputation. I had no trouble uncovering Michael's strategy. It was as predictable as it was insidious. The Anderson name carried weight in Spokane, not just in polite social circles, but in the corridors where influence was currency. Their connections threaded through country clubs where million-dollar deals were whispered over scotch, through charity boards where reputations were polished like silver, through professional organizations where a single rumor could do the work of a wrecking ball. They had chosen their battlefield well, and they were wielding Emily's story like a finely sharpened blade. Local Facebook groups churned with embellished headlines that grew more poisonous with each retelling. Construction company owner demands $450,000 from daughter after ruining her wedding. Spokane businessman sues own child for wedding expenses. By noon, the whispers had reached my phone in the form of 7 separate business calls, all laced with a careful, measured concern. The president of the Spokane Rotary Club inquired about my state of mind and whether I could still be relied upon for upcoming community projects. 3 different contractors delicately hinted at things they'd heard, suggesting trouble that could impact our long-standing working relationships. Emily and Michael knew exactly what they were doing. In a city like Spokane, your reputation wasn't just your name. It was your livelihood, your armor, your foundation. Strip a person of that, and you didn't just wound them. You crippled them. But they'd made one fatal miscalculation. I drove home, each mile sharpening my resolve, and pulled out the meticulously organized files Margaret Richards had helped me prepare. 25 years worth of financial records. Every canceled check, every payment, every receipt, a quarter century of documented generosity, unasked for and unacknowledged by Emily. I picked up the phone. "Margaret," I said, my voice steady, "I need to schedule a press conference for tomorrow morning. We're going public with everything." Her pause was weighted. "Are you certain? Once it's out there, you can't take it back." "They've already made it public," I replied. "Now it's time for the truth." The next 6 hours were a campaign in precision. I contacted the Spokane Business Journal directly, offering them complete transparency. I reached out to the 3 reporters Emily's side had already courted, promising them evidence, not rumors, that would tell the real story. And then I made the most important calls of all, to 25 years worth of business partners, community leaders, and professional allies. People who had seen Clark Construction rise from nothing, who knew the hours, the sacrifices, the integrity behind every brick and beam. Dave, I said to one of my oldest colleagues, call every name on our contractor list. Tomorrow there's going to be a story, my story, and it will set the record straight about Emily's situation. The battlefield was theirs, but the truth, that was mine. By the time the sun dipped below the Spokane skyline, my plan was fully in motion. The Spokane Business Journal had confirmed they would run a full-length feature. 2 local news stations agreed to cover my press conference live. The binders of documentation, 25 years of meticulous financial records, were copied, labeled, and ready for distribution. Emily's smear campaign had stretched across 3 relentless days. My answer would take just one morning. And unlike her rumor-fueled theatrics, mine would be grounded in proof, cold, irrefutable, black and white truth. Properly documented, professionally presented, a truth so complete that no whisper campaign could withstand its weight. There were still 24 days before the legal deadline, but by this time tomorrow, Emily would learn a lesson she'd never forget. Reputation warfare is not a game for the unprepared, nor for those without real substance to defend. Tuesday morning arrived with the precision of a construction project breaking ground. At exactly 9:00 a.m., I unleashed the full weight of my defense. Across every platform Emily and Michael had polluted with their half-truths and manipulations, I posted 25 years of financial documentation. The presentation was clean, clinical, and devastating. Undeniable bank statements showing a staggering $937,000 in payments over the years. Categorized spreadsheets breaking down education costs, transportation expenses, housing support, and lifestyle luxuries. Photographs capturing Emily at every stage of her life, from gap-toothed child to polished adult, each image paired with the financial support that made that moment possible. It was full transparency laid bare, a lifetime of sacrifice documented down to the last cent. At the top, the headline I'd chosen in bold, 25 years of support, the true story behind Emily's claims. Beneath it ran a detailed timeline charting her journey from grateful daughter to entitled adult, each milestone accompanied by verified records of exactly what had been spent to get her there. The reaction was swift and seismic. Within an hour, my phone began to ring, not with suspicion or cautious questions this time, but with voices carrying something I hadn't heard in days: support. "James," said Tom Bradley from Bradley Electrical, his voice thick with disbelief, "I had no idea. My kids are in college, and I'm spending maybe $15,000 a year total." "You spent that much every semester." Then Bob Martinez called. "I owe you an apology," he said plainly. "After seeing those records, I understand exactly what you've been dealing with. That level of entitlement would break any parent." Online, the shift was just as dramatic. The tide that had been pushing against me suddenly reversed. Comments that once championed Emily's victimhood now seemed embarrassingly naive in the face of hard numbers. Screenshots of $52,000 annual tuition payments spread across feeds. Receipts for 3 separate luxury cars ricocheted through the same Facebook groups that had once gossiped about my supposed cruelty. And for the first time in days, I felt it. That subtle but unmistakable weight of public opinion tipping in my favor. 28 years worth of housing, clothing, education, and lifestyle expenses, the kind of costs that would have bankrupted most families, now lay in plain sight for anyone willing to see. It wasn't just numbers on a page. It was nearly 3 decades of my life, measured in sacrifices I had quietly made without expectation of repayment or applause. At precisely 11 a.m., Margaret Richards called, her voice practically humming with excitement. "James, the response has been extraordinary," she said. "The Spokane Business Journal wants to run a feature on financial responsibility and entitlement. You've managed to turn a smear campaign into something the entire community is learning from." By noon, Emily's original Facebook post, the one she had crafted so carefully to cast herself as the wounded party, looked almost pitiful compared to the mountain of evidence I had laid out. The contrast was brutal. People weren't just reading my documentation. They were sharing it with the captions like, "This is what true parental sacrifice looks like. No wonder he's asking for repayment. This is a full-time job." The Spokane construction community, which had once quietly wondered if I'd lost my footing, now rallied without hesitation. Contractors who had kept their distance were suddenly posting about my integrity and work ethic, recalling late nights, impossible deadlines, and jobs I'd completed not for profit but for pride. The president of the Rotary Club issued a public statement backing my position, and even the mayor's office chimed in with a comment about the importance of financial accountability within families. Then came the text from Dave, my foreman, sent from the middle of a busy construction site. "Boss, the crew's talking about your situation. Everyone's behind you. Nobody can believe what Emily put you through." The local news stations were quick to pick up the story, reframing it as a human interest piece about sacrifice, responsibility, and boundaries. They didn't have to embellish a single detail. The bank statements, receipts, and photographs spoke for themselves. A stark, undeniable timeline of devotion. By late afternoon, it was clear Emily's attack had detonated in her own hands. The carefully crafted illusion of victimhood couldn't survive even a moment's contact with the hard granite of documented truth. The same community that had once entertained doubts about me now looked at her with narrowed eyes, wondering how anyone could twist such generosity into cruelty. Even Michael's influential family couldn't shield them. Their connections, once a shield, now became a spotlight, exposing exactly the sort of people they had chosen to align themselves with. The Anderson family name, which they had tried to wield as a weapon, was now being whispered about as a source of misplaced trust. By evening, the tide had turned completely. No one saw Emily and Michael as the casualties of an overbearing father anymore. They were revealed for what they truly were: entitled opportunists who had lashed out the moment boundaries were drawn. My documentation told a story no emotional appeal could smother. Every bank statement was a chapter, every receipt a sentence, every photograph a footnote in a saga of 25 years, worth of devotion and sacrifice. And for the first time in weeks, the truth was the loudest voice in the room. Every receipt wasn't just a slip of paper. It was a testament to years of love, sacrifice, and quiet endurance that had been treated as nothing more than an entitlement, a ledger of unacknowledged devotion. My phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. It was Emily. "Dad, please take down those financial records. People are saying terrible things about us." I stared at the words for a moment, feeling no urge to reply. My thumb hovered over the screen for the briefest second before I pressed delete. 23 days remained. The lesson was nearly complete. At 6:47 a.m. Wednesday morning, the still air in our cramped hotel room was split by the shrill ring of Michael's phone. Both of us jerked awake, though neither of us had truly been sleeping. The room felt smaller than it had the night before, claustrophobic with the weight of public disgrace, social media fallout, and the financial storm gathering outside our thin walls. Michael answered on speaker, his father's voice filling the space, deep, commanding, with the kind of authority that brooks no delay. "Michael, we need to talk. Now." I watched the blood drain from Michael's face as his father spoke. Emily's eyes darted between us, searching for meaning in the one-sided conversation. Michael's answers came clipped, defensive, and far too controlled to be casual. "Yes, I understand the implications. No, I didn't know about the extent of the documentation. The situation, it's more complicated than we anticipated." The call lasted 12 minutes, but the silence that followed felt longer. When he finally lowered the phone, Michael didn't look at Emily right away. He stared at the darkened screen for several long seconds, then exhaled through clenched teeth. "My family wants me home. Today." Emily blinked, confused. "Home? Michael, this is temporary. Your father will calm down once." "Emily, stop." The sharpness in his tone made her flinch. He had never spoken to her like that before. "My father got 3 separate calls yesterday from business partners asking about our family troubles," he said slowly, each word edged with steel. "The country club is buzzing with talk about the Anderson family's connection to financial fraud." "Financial fraud?" Emily's voice pitched higher, defensive. "That's absurd. This is a family dispute that got blown out of proportion." Michael didn't bother answering. He turned to the dresser, yanking clothes from drawers and shoving them into a suitcase with quick, aggressive movements. Your father released bank records, Emily, nearly $1 million in support you never acknowledged. To my family's friends and business associates, that doesn't look like generosity you forgot to mention. It looks like deception at best, manipulation at worst. The air seemed to thin around her. Panic began to rise in Emily's chest like ice water flooding her lungs. You're leaving? We just got married 6 days ago. He froze for a moment, back still to her. 6 days that have managed to destroy my professional reputation and my family's standing in the community. The zipper of the suitcase rasped loudly as he stuffed more clothes inside. I have a trust fund, Emily. I have business prospects, a future that depends on maintaining certain relationships. I can't burn those bridges for you. Her voice trembled. What about us? What about our vows? Michael turned then, finally meeting her eyes for the first time since the call. The look in his face was one she didn't recognize. Cold, deliberate, and final. What marriage? Wandi said quietly. You dragged me into a financial disaster without warning. Your father is demanding almost $1 million in repayment. Money you don't have. My family's lawyer says I need to protect myself from liability. That means putting distance between us. Now, liability. The word felt alien in a marriage conversation. I'm your wife, Emily said, her voice trembling, as if that alone should be a shield strong enough to stop the avalanche bearing down on them. Michael didn't blink. His eyes were cold, steady, and final. You're a financial burden, he said flatly. No assets, massive debt, and now, scandal. The words didn't just land. They lodged themselves deep in Emily's chest, each syllable a blow she couldn't deflect. Her phone, silent for days, suddenly buzzed. For a moment, hope flared. Maybe it was her father, maybe a friend checking in. But the screen told a different story. Emily, dear, the message read, Michael needs to her. Family obligations, you understand? It was from Michael's mother, the same woman who only 6 days ago had embraced Emily at the wedding, praising her elegance and warmth, was now slicing ties with surgical precision. The politeness in her tone made it worse, like being served a death sentence with a smile. Emily turned back to Michael, desperation creeping into her voice. Please, we can work through this together. My father is angry now, but he loves me. This will blow over. Michael gestured toward her open laptop, the screen still glowing with a cascade of social media comments, each one sharper than the last, each one dismantling her character in real time. This isn't blowing over. Your father posted 25 years of financial records for the world to see. People are calling you a spoiled trust fund baby who's never worked a day in her life. Her instinct was to deny it, to fight the accusation, but it clung to her because it was true. She had never held a job longer than 6 months, never paid her own rent, never even questioned the source of the comforts she lived in. I was just being a daughter, she whispered, the words sounding weak even to her own ears. Daughters are supposed to be supported by their fathers. Not to the tune of nearly $1 million over 25 years, Michael shot back, and certainly not without gratitude or any effort to give something back. He yanked the zipper on his suitcase, the sound slicing through the tense air. My family moves in circles where people build things. Companies, charities, legacies. They create value. They give back. What have you ever created, Emily, besides expenses? She felt something inside her fracture, something more fundamental than her marriage. It was the shattering of her self-image, her place in the world. Where will I go? She asked, panic tightening around her ribs. I don't have money for the hotel. My cards are maxed. Everyone stopped talking to me. Michael paused at the door, his hand resting on the handle. Call your father. Apologize. Take responsibility. Maybe he'll help you figure out how to become an actual adult. Her voice cracked. Michael, please, don't leave me alone. I've been alone in this marriage since the day it started, he said quietly. You've contributed nothing except expectations and expenses. His gaze softened, not with pity, but with a weary truth. Maybe losing everything will teach you something my father's money never could. The door clicked shut behind him, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silence. Emily stood frozen in the middle of the room, staring at the neatly made hotel bed and the half-empty suitcase he'd left behind. The space felt cavernous now, every corner filled with a void she had no idea how to cross. Her wedding dress still hung in the closet like a ghost, white silk and delicate lace that once promised forever. Now only a silent witness to 6 days that had unraveled her entire world. 6 days, and she had gone from a wife to an outcast. No husband, no family support, no friends to call, no money to her name. For the first time in her 28 years, Emily Clark Anderson stood entirely alone. Not metaphorically, not in the passing way people say when they feel isolated, but truly terrifyingly alone. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed, phone in hand, staring at the screen as if it might offer her a way out. Her thumb hovered over a number she hadn't dialed since that first frantic Saturday when things began to crumble. Her father's name stared back at her, Clark Anderson. Simple black text on a glowing screen, yet it felt like the only lifeline she had left. A lifeline she wasn't sure she deserved to grab. 22 days, that's all she had to come up with, nearly $1 million. Money she did not have, if she wanted even a chance to repair the bridges she'd burned. 22 days to somehow become a person she had never been before. The phone rang once, then came his voice, a voice she'd known her whole life, now stripped of its warmth. There was no venom, no rage, just a steady calm that told her he had been expecting this call, but not necessarily hoping for it. "Hello, Emily." Her throat tightened. The single word she'd been rehearsing dissolved into something fragile and broken. "Dad." It came out barely above a whisper, trembling with shame. I don't even know where to start." "Start with the truth," he said, his tone measured. "Do you understand what happened this week?" Emily looked around the hotel room, at the empty side of the bed where Michael's suitcase had once been, at her laptop still open to the flood of cruel, mocking comments, at the echo of his absence that seemed to fill the air like static. "Yes," she breathed, and the admission felt like a collapse inside her chest. "I lost everything." She swallowed, her voice splintering. "My husband left me this morning. His family, they've cut me off completely. I don't have enough to pay tonight's hotel bill. Everyone hates me. Do you understand why?" The question didn't come like an accusation, more like a surgeon asking if a patient understood the nature of their illness. But it cut deep all the same. For 28 years, she had mastered the art of shifting blame. If something went wrong, someone else had caused it. If a consequence arrived, it was because the world was unfair, not because of her. But now she had run out of people to blame. "Yes," she whispered, each word scraping her throat raw. "Because I treated you like a bank account instead of a father. Because I never saw or cared what you sacrificed for me. Because I was selfish, entitled, and cruel." Silence stretched between them. She could hear him breathing, the sound slow and deliberate, as if he were weighing every syllable she had spoken. "Go on," he said at last. "I saw the records you published," she continued, her voice trembling. $900,000 over 25 years. I never asked where the money came from. Never said thank you. Never thought about what you had to give up to give me everything. I threw you out of my wedding, the wedding you paid for in full, as if you were nothing." Her voice cracked harder now, tears blurring the room. "And when you stood up to me, I didn't just push you away. I tried to ruin you. I lied about you online. I encouraged Michael's family to spread rumors about your character. I turned you into the villain in my story when the truth was—" She choked back a sob. "The truth was, you were the only one who ever stood by me." Saying it felt like lancing a wound that had been festering for years. The pain was sharp, but in it was a strange relief. "I became," she said almost to herself, "everything wrong with spoiled children who never grow up." Her father's voice softened then, just enough for her to hear the man she remembered from childhood. The one who once believed that she could be so much more than this. "Do you remember when you were 8 years old, right after your mother passed away? You would curl up in my arms every night, your small arms wrapped tightly around my neck, and you'd whisper that I was the best daddy in the whole world. I remember those moments as if they were yesterday. Back then, I made myself a silent promise. I would give you everything I could, every comfort, every opportunity, every ounce of protection, because I loved you more than life itself. But somewhere along the way, without either of us noticing at first, giving you everything became the very thing that pushed you away. My generosity slowly turned into something else, into a shield between us, and eventually a wedge. And one day I realized with a kind of quiet horror, you didn't love me the same way anymore. I never stopped loving you, Dad, you said, your voice trembling. I just, I stopped showing it. I stopped being grateful. I stopped being a daughter and became, you paused, the word catching in your throat, a consumer. Then came the question, quiet but sharp, heavy enough to steal the air from the room. What do you want from me now? It terrified me because I knew it wasn't just about the present moment. It was about what kind of relationship we could have, if any, in the years to come. I want to earn your respect, you continued. I want to be the daughter you deserve to have. I want to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet, how to be an adult who contributes instead of just taking. You wiped your eyes with the back of your hand, your voice almost breaking. But first, I need help. Just enough help to survive long enough to prove I can change. What kind of help? I asked, my tone steady but my heart pounding. I need enough money to stay in the hotel for 1 more week while I look for a job, any job. I just need a chance to show I can support myself. I took a slow breath. Emily, if I help you this time, there will be conditions. Anything, you said quickly. You'll find employment within 2 weeks. I don't care if it's cleaning offices or waiting tables. Pride is a luxury you can't afford anymore. I understand. No request for money for 6 months. You'll live on what you earn. Prove you can do that, and then we'll talk again. Yes. And we'll speak once a week. But those conversations will be between 2 adults, not a parent and a dependent child. Your eyes filled again, but you nodded. I want that. I want to earn the right to be your daughter again. I opened my banking app. Emily, I'm going to transfer $1,000 to your account. That will cover the hotel for 1 week, plus basic groceries. After that, you're on your own. Dad, thank you. I know I don't deserve... You're right, I interrupted gently but firmly. You don't deserve it. But everyone deserves one chance to grow up, even at 28. My voice softened. Emily, I have always loved you. Now I want to see if I can respect you too. You swallowed hard. I won't let you down. Not again. We'll see, I said quietly. Love you, sweetheart. When the call ended, I sat in silence. For the first time in a week, you felt something other than despair. It wasn't quite relief, but it was something just as powerful. Possibility. The possibility of becoming someone worth respecting. 21 days to prove you could change. A lifetime to earn back what you had thrown away. You opened your laptop and began scrolling through job listings in Spokane. Every entry-level position looked intimidating to someone who had never truly worked before. But intimidating was still better than impossible. For the first time in your life, you were about to earn something yourself. And in that moment, the real education began.